Welcome to week 11, everybody. If you're new here, hi, welcome to This Cat Can Ball, the show where we feature one player each week who's largely been unknown to either riding the bench for a long time, being drafted late, or in some cases not drafted at all. But they showed up this week and we're going to give them their moment in the spotlight. Now, we're far enough into the season where we're seeing tides turn, not so much in a new direction, but kind of back to the old way. The biggest case would be in our two reigning conference champions, right? The Buccaneers and the Chiefs. The Buccaneers came off two big defeats, which was like, it's out of character for them, right? Especially when you got Tom Brady, who can do no wrong. And true to form, he came back and just killed it on Monday night. So it's like, you know what? Bucs are in top contention again. On the flip side, the AFC conference champions, Kansas City Chiefs, at one point they were 3-4. Mahomes was leading the NFL, I think, in turnovers. If he wasn't leading, he was pretty high up there in turnovers. And it was like, well, is it a Madden curse for Mahomes? A Super Bowl hangover for the Chiefs? You know, have teams started to find out about Mahomes? Have they, you know, has he been in the league long enough to where they're finding out his tendencies? And for me, I might have mentioned it in a previous week, but after a while, some players just go through this, like, you know, Favre, Manning, even Brady when he was younger. They go through a phase of the NFL getting a little bit acclimated to them, but they still have it. Obviously, Mahomes does. He's just been right back on fire as of late. But other teams that are falling off, one of them that I keep harping on, and it's not without reason. The Buffalo Bills are coming off their second loss in a row. Last week was, you could have probably just called that a fluke, right? Jacksonville beats them 9-6. Where the hell did that come from? This week they lose again, and they're starting to lose their grip as, you know, a strong AFC contender, especially considering that the Ravens pulled off a big win with a relatively unknown player. Speaking of which, Lamar Jackson wasn't playing, right? So who'd they bring up? Who was their backup? Tyler Huntley had to come in, and you know, he's completely unknown, right? Well, relatively unknown. When I read about where he's from and all that, I thought to myself, you know what? He would make a good contender for This Cat Can Ball. And as usual, I was on the Instagrams and I saw an Instagram that had this about him. And it was giving him praise about being ready. And I thought, that's great to let people know that, you know what, this one guy, he deserves a little attention. He deserves to be in the spotlight. But then I remember this from last year.
Lamar Tyler Huntley out of Utah.
And I knew this guy could ball. You see, I am ahead of the curve once again. These guys, I know them. I'm calling them out. I'm finding them so you guys don't have to look for them. But now a big sports news outlet finds out about it and promotes it. It kind of leaves me thinking like, hey, I knew this guy could ball back in the day. I'm letting you guys know right now. Maybe next year this guy moves away from Baltimore because Lamar Jackson has that spot locked up, right? Starting quarterback. No one's gonna dethrone him there. He goes somewhere else and he balls out. You're gonna say, hey, I knew back in 2020, This Cat Can Ball showed me that this guy was good. I knew he was good. He comes out maybe next year, 2022, and he kills it. And I called it 2 years ago. The great thing about him was the whole point of that was that you got to be ready, right? In Arizona, Kyler Murray, who I'm super high on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, right? I love him. He's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Colt McCoy, most people in Texas know him. He was, you know, the UT Wonder Kid quarterback. He was very successful. He's had a lifelong career as a Band-Aid in the NFL as a quarterback, which isn't a bad thing because he is a decent starter. You know what I mean? You probably can't count on him for an entire season, but you need someone to start in place of, you know, your star player that goes down. Colt McCoy will, you know, like stop the bleeding, so to speak. And it's happening now that we're this late in the season that injuries are starting to be season ending. I mean, some already are, right? Like it depends usually on the injury. The torn ACL is pretty much the end all be all for a player's season. Chase Young is out. Jameis Winston is out. Juju Smith-Schuster with the Steelers. Those three guys, they are out for the season. So the next player has to step up, right? It's always next man up. You got to be ready, which is why I was so grateful last week to talk about Cam Newton. He came in. He almost won this week. And it's so crazy because there were two games that were decided largely by big plays late in the game. It was the Washington football team, the Carolina Panthers. If they had picked up that first down, we might be singing a different tune about Carolina. We'd be saying these guys are in playoff contention. Cam has brought them back from the brink and they are ready to make a charge to the playoffs. And on the flip side, on Sunday night, the Steelers and the Chargers, it was actually a very good game that came down to the wire. Had it not been for one busted coverage in the Steelers secondary where the Chargers broke a huge touchdown. The Steelers would have held on to that lead, and we'd be saying now that, well, you know what, maybe Ben has something left in the tank, and he can help the Steelers push for a playoff run. We'd be talking about these two aging quarterbacks and saying that, wow, these guys, the old guys, would be the ones that would breathe new life into their team. But on the topic of being ready, that leads us to the cat that won this week. Now, as we all know, the Tennessee Titans, they lost the best running back in the NFL, Derrick Henry. He might come back, I think he's got like a 6 to 10 week recovery period. So if they make the Super Bowl, you might see him get some touches. They also lost one of their best receivers. He's an aging receiver, but he's still great. Julio Jones went down. So they had to go up against the Texans this week, which was a really big surprise upset. The Texans won. So who's going to fill in, right? You have A.J. Brown, but without Julio Jones to really balance out to keep a defense honest, they're going to be covering A.J. Brown a lot. So who's going to step up? And that honor went to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. This guy just came out of nowhere, really, to have a great game. And it was the kind of game that you would expect someone like Julio Jones to have. His stats were that good. Now let's talk about this guy. Like with most cats that can ball on this show, he was undrafted out of Indiana. Now, when you think about Indiana, that's not an Ohio State or a Alabama. It's not a football powerhouse school. So knowing that he didn't get drafted, he was in and out of practice squads, signed for a roster for one day, maybe for one game, and then relegated back to the practice squad or sometimes outright cut. And that was his 2020. 2021, he comes in and he's doing marginally well. But then this week, he gets the start, which means he's going to get a lot of passes coming his way because Julio Jones is not there. He's got to help out A.J. Brown, and they don't have Derrick Henry. So defenses, when they go up against the Titans, they know they're going to face a totally different scheme, right? It's not going to be run heavy. They don't got these two great guys on the outside. So defenses kind of have him in check even before the game starts. So how does Nick do? He gets 8 passes thrown his way, which is pretty good. Ryan Tannehill is not necessarily a big-time throwing quarterback, but he knew he had to throw a lot this game. He threw 8 passes Nick's way. Nick caught 7 for 107 yards, including a big 46-yard splash play. Now, when you talk about someone doing that, if you were to insert Julio Jones, people would just say, yeah, Julio Jones, he's a star. He's a big-time playmaker. If Julio caught 7 catches for 107 yards, and you also had a big 46-yard play, yeah, that's par for the course for a guy who's probably going to the Hall of Fame, I think. But no, it was this undrafted guy out of Indiana who really, like I said, that Tennessee offense is so depleted. They don't have Derrick Henry, the best back in the league. They don't have Julio Jones. They never did have much of a passing attack. You don't really need one when you have Derrick Henry. Defenses, no, we don't have to worry too much about this. We don't have to worry too much about their running game, passing game. They really only have one option, right? A.J. Brown. But no, this undrafted guy comes out of nowhere and puts up superstar numbers. And that's awesome. Now defenses, now going into next week, whoever faces the Titans, they're going to still know that Derrick Henry's not playing, that Julio Jones isn't playing. But now they got to contend with this new guy. But now when they look at his game footage from this past week, they're going to look at him and think,
this cat can ball, man.
So that's going to wrap up the show for this week, guys. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you do, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be alerted when these come out. These come out on a regular basis, but just in case you did forget, the bell will alert you so you'll know when to check it out. I do also have a Patreon. It's located in the description. And so, yeah, that'll wrap it up for this week. Remember, just one more time, like, comment, subscribe. I am Omar, and I will see you guys next week.